Welcome to Digital Hospitality. I am your host, Sean Walchef. This is a Cali BBQ Media production. Every single week, we talk about digital hospitality. That is our ongoing thesis. Every single business needs to be digital first. Every business also needs to be in the hospitality business. There's never been a more exciting time to be an entrepreneur, to be somebody that is building a business, because there is a blending of technology, of media, and marketing, so that somebody that, like us, we own a single unit barbecue restaurant. We just launched our second location, which is a ghost kitchen. Now we're able to have interviews like the one that we're going to have today with tech entrepreneurs, people that are doing incredible things all over the globe. Today's guest is Dilip Rao, CEO and co-founder of Sharebite. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm grateful to bring our listeners in, to give them a seat at the table. It's super exciting for me to be in this space. We've always been a tech forward company. We opened in a recession. We opened in 2008 in a part of San Diego that was a challenging location, given any kind of expert's opinion of they tell you location, location, location. We picked a very challenging one, and it forced us to rely on the internet for marketing. It forced us to rely on social media, forced us to do a lot of things that, had we opened in a different location, had we been more successful, I don't think we would have been in the position that we are in today, where we're so confident in what we do with digital marketing that we can produce digital media. And that's really what we want to teach our listeners how to do. And somebody like you that has such a unique background, can you tell us when you almost died?
Yeah, so it's a great way to start any kind of conversation. Yeah, so look, this is back in 2014. So these are all things that you don't expect, right? None of us actually go through life expecting to sort of like go through an experience like that. But oftentimes it's not about going through it. It's about how you're going to overcome those challenges, right? And for me, a lot of that was, I think it all came together. I was crossing the street, 87-year-old came speeding down the street, 54th Street, turned on to 2nd Avenue. I was in New York City, of course. My head goes through the windshield. I go flying off the car. And then they tell my wife that they don't think I'm going to make it. I get to the hospital. And so suddenly there I am, kind of like waking up, not really being able to feel anything because my body's like in total like shock. And then I'm starting to go through like the worst case scenarios, of course, right? Gosh, like the things that we all sort of like really consume ourselves with, right? Such as, all the cursory factors when you think about it, right? I mean, I could go down a whole list of like, these things, but it's the stuff that like don't really mean that much, but they mean something to you because you don't, it's kind of like circumstantial, right? So for me, it was more like, of course, being proud of like, the work that you do, or, sort of like your circle of friends, this and that. But like when you go through a crisis like that, right? And I think, and then you start to wonder, like, am I going to live a normal life again? Am I going to be able to, do the things that I probably took for granted every single day, right? None of us think for a second, is the sun going to come up tomorrow, right? Because it is. And because of the sheer frequency at which it happens, you tend to sort of take it for granted. Like things like being able to stand and walk and, speak. And so when you go through an experience like that, it really makes you sort of, dive deep into kind of like, why am I here? And, what purpose, am I serving, or what problem in society have I helped solve? And I began thinking, pretty deeply about that side of it. And to me, in a strange way, I've been playing with the house's money all along because, I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 5 years old, with my parents, and lived sort of that typical immigrant life. But I'm also, I count my blessings to know that, like, from being born in a small village in India to sort of coming here, growing up in New York City, being a product of the sort of the public school system, and then sort of, doing the things that you really, really enjoy. It's really a blessing and privilege to be able to be in that position. So a lot of what I began thinking about was like, I'm not sure what it is I'm going to do, but I'm going to just try to figure out how to, solve a problem in society, right? Or maybe extend this, this long arm of leverage, so to speak, to be able to like figure it out. I didn't know how I'm going to do it. Uh, not long thereafter, I met my co-founder Mohsin Memon at our. We're both alums of Columbia Business School, and we both met. And it's one of those strange things where it just happens, right? You meet somebody, and then you sort of like you realize like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like you start talking, and then I think our first interaction, I think we really hit it off. And where Mohsin and I really bonded together was we wanted to create for-profit businesses with a purpose and a mission at the core of it. And so our thing was, we had both done some volunteer event with this nonprofit organization called City Harvest. It's pretty big in New York City. Very respectable institution. They do some phenomenal work. And both of us around those, sort of 2013, 2014, had done volunteer events with City Harvest, and we learned about this childhood hunger crisis. And you don't really hear about childhood hunger, or I think all of us sort of grew up watching, sort of those Sally Struthers commercials. So you always think childhood hunger happens like in some foreign country, but it afflicts our own communities. I mean, New York City, right, is arguably one of the wealthiest places on earth. We're also home to roughly 500,000 kids that go hungry every single day. And like, how is that possible? Like, I think we live in this unique period, even pre-pandemic. We live in this unique period in the country's history where almost everybody agrees that there's an inequality problem in the country, but the disagreement is really about like whose responsibility it is to solve it, or sort of like, or how it's going to get solved. And so where Mohsin and I really really sort of like where it all sort of came together was like, look, we want to try to solve a problem in society, and we want to try to solve childhood hunger. Now, we can either sort of go on our respective paths and create another nonprofit to sort of address that, but then like there are much better and smarter people out there running, nonprofits like City Harvest, right? I'm good friends with one of their, board members, just a phenomenal organization. And so we were like, look, why not create these for-profit businesses? Why not create a for-profit business and figure out how to give nonprofits like City Harvest access to a recurring revenue stream that they've never had access to before, right? This way, we get to do what we're good at and what we've built our careers on, right? Whether it's in banking or private equity, we know how to build for-profit businesses. So why not combine our sort of our resources, our relationships, and really attack this from a very, very different angle? And I'm sure we've all heard, and many of the listeners have heard of those companies, right? The Warby Parkers, the Tom Shoes of the world. The one thing that I always remembered is, I have, these are Warby Parker glasses, right? So I'm wearing them right now, but I don't always think of every time I put those on. I don't always think of like the extra pair that was like given to somebody in need. But the thing with food is that it's one part awareness and another part sort of solution, right? So like when you order on Sharebite, for example, it says, Sean, thanks for ordering from, whatever restaurant, right? We made a donation, or we donated a meal to help feed children facing hunger in local communities. And it was done at no additional cost to you. And it also helped the small restaurants, small businesses really get back on their feet, and also gave City Harvest and Feeding America and local food banks access to a recurring stream that they've never had access to before. We thought that was a really, really interesting idea, because let's face it, you the reason why one of the reasons why childhood hunger sort of continues to sort of exist and go on is that um, what we've discovered is there's not a lot of awareness about it, right? If everybody knew that, look, kids in my own communities or kids in our own backyards are like going hungry. Americans in general are generally very charitable people, right? They want to take care of each other, and we've seen that sort of happen time and time, especially in New York City, right? Um, this city has gone through so much, especially in the pandemic. But like, I grew up here, right? New Yorkers are some of the they're they get right to the point, right? Most of the rest of the country sometimes sees us as rude, but I think they're some of the kindest and most generous people that I've ever encountered, just in general, when you see people in New York. And if you give them awareness and you give them a conduit to make a difference in society, and you don't actually pass a penny of that cost back to the end user, we thought that was something very interesting. It was worth looking into. So that's really the foundational story of Sharebite. And our business model was less about wanting to become a food ordering platform, but it was more about a way of thinking, a new way of sort of doing business, right? We wanted to be the conduit that helped align the incentives for the private sector to undertake the burden of social good. And we wanted to do it in a way where the cost of that social good, right, was not borne by the end user, but by us. And so that's why we created Sharebite. And we really focused on being that B2B, that corporate food ordering model, because our business model was also predicated on taking that collective purchasing power of corporate clients and using that purchasing power to drive value back to society, but also to small businesses. And in the wake of this pandemic, and I think there are a lot of companies that are coming to the realization that, like, look, we're going to emerge from this crisis, and when we do, not only do we want to just bring our employees back, we want to do it in a safe and compliant and sort of orderly manner. But like, a lot of our employees are going to come back to the office and look around and go, oh my God, my favorite pizza store around the corner no longer exists, or the coffee shop that I used to go to every day, every afternoon, that's gone. And there is going to be a renewed focus on wanting to support small businesses, local businesses, as well as society in general. And fortunately, Sharebite has been singing this song for the past 5-6 years now. And it unfortunately took a pandemic for people to realize that the sort of the fragile thread that sort of holds these institutions together. We've played such an important role in doing right. Our company motto is "Do the right thing." Right, a little page out of Spike Lee's book, Spike Lee's movie, and it's about doing the right thing. Right, everything that we've done throughout this pandemic has been about doing the right thing. Right, when a lot of other companies went into self-preservation mode, we were levered, directly correlated to this pandemic, right? Because people are not going into the office, and therefore transactions are not, flowing through our system as much as they were pre-pandemic. But you know what? We said, the first thing that we're going to do is make a decision, right? We're not going to let go of a single person on our team because of the pandemic. And so we kept the whole team together. We were the first company, probably the only company in our space, that reached out to our restaurant partners, thousands of restaurant partners, on March 16th, day one of the stay-in-place orders. And we told them, we're not sure what's going to happen here, but where we don't feel comfortable is charging you a penny in commission. So we preferentially waived all of our commissions to our restaurants throughout in the pandemic. So between the months of March and September of last year, we pumped our restaurants with nothing but orders, and we didn't charge them a penny in commission, right? And as a restaurateur yourself, restaurant people that own and run and operate and work at restaurants are some of the hardest working people I've ever encountered in my life. And you know, it's been unfortunate. Like they just have not gotten the break that they need and deserve, right? Because restaurateurs, for better or worse, like they don't have that safety net, right? The viability, their ability to put food on the table, um, uh, and provide for their families is directly correlated to the success of that restaurant. And so we made a decision, right? We didn't let go of anybody because of the pandemic. We waived our commissions to restaurants, and we reached out to our clients. Many of them were looking for different ways to have an impact and really take care of frontline workers and first responders. A number of our clients said, you know what, we have an initiative here. Our employees want to give back. How can we do this with Sharebite? And so a year ago, when sort of during the darkest days of the pandemic, we went to our restaurant partners, said, look, we're going to pump you with some orders. You just need to go and deliver these to the hospitals. So between March and I believe June of last year, hundreds of thousands of lunches were delivered every single day to all the city hospitals. So Bellevue, Harlem, Mount Sinai, NYU, Weill Cornell, Columbia, Elmhurst, Montefiore, a number of others that I'm not even naming here, all received lunch orders through the Sharebite platform, and a lot of it was courtesy of our clients, our corporate clients, some law firms, a couple of investment banks here and there. They all stood up and said, you know what, we're gonna start placing orders on the platform. So yeah, we've done so much, and we're really proud of it. And we've emerged from this pandemic. It's not over yet. In a much stronger position than we would have ever thought we would have been in, right? And so we're a nationwide business today. There's just about 65 companies on the wait list to get the Sharebite stations installed at their office, which we'll discuss shortly. But I'm super proud of what this team has been able to accomplish. And for myself, and I speak on behalf of my co-founder Mohsen, our greatest privilege really is that we get to work with some of the most talented and passionate and mission-driven people on a day-to-day basis. And that's like, it's a blessing, right? We get to do what we love, we get to have an impact, and we get to work with really smart and talented and driven people. And that means the world.
And Dilip, I can't thank you enough for that story. I wish it didn't take near death for people to awaken and find their purpose. I mean, you being as successful as you were in your previous career in investment banking, and then having a near-death experience, having your wife having to go through that experience, you go through that, your family, your loved ones, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, be the change that you want to see. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, the pandemic it's taken a pandemic, it's taken near death of companies for a lot of people to waken up, CEOs, people that are mission driven, that want to be mission driven, to understand, well, why not? Why not now? And why not us? And I think that's a very powerful message, because I had James Flores, he's the CEO of San Diego Food Bank. He was on our podcast a while back. Stover, my producer, he'll put a link in the show notes, but it's an incredible conversation with this CEO that he works with, 200 different nonprofit food banks here in San Diego. And, back to the statistics you're talking about, I mean, we're talking about 477,000 people in San Diego don't know where their next meal will come from.
Yep.
And 1 out of 5 of those are children. I mean, how is that happening when, us as a restaurant, we're trying to reduce our waste. We're trying to figure out, how do we do better portion size? Do we need to, have as much on our menu items as we had before? If all of this is going into the garbage, what's happening to the garbage? It's going to the landfill. It's just this endless cycle. But what can we do with unused food? And is there ways to partner with food banks? Is there ways to make sure that, that these kids here in San Diego, that these kids here in New York, that these kids in all these cities in America actually can have a meal? How do we do that? Well, we do that through exactly what we're doing now. We're having a conversation. And that's the thing that I'm most excited about, is that there's never been a time where so many different, the brain power that is coming together from tech, from banking, from all these different industries, from hospitality, coming together and go, well, if your team creates this incredible platform and you're going out knowing that you already know the law firms, you already know the architect firms, you already know the asset managers, you already understand that ecosystem of catering, of how they need to provide for not just their employees, but like, as you say in your company statement on the website, how do they feed communities? You feed communities by feeding the employees, but by making an impact on every single order that you make. It's super, super exciting. Can you tell me a little bit more about, yes, it's great to have an idea. Yes, you went to Columbia Business School. Yes, they tell you, you know how to build a business. Well, building a business in a book and building a business in school is actually different than launching the business in real life. Can you tell me about getting to, finding another mission-driven founder, somebody that, will share all these blood, sweat, and tears with you is fantastic, but then you actually have got to launch. How did you launch Sharebite?
Yeah, so such a great point. Some of it is luck, right? Some of it is like, or kismet, however you want to sort of call it, like, meeting people that are equally mission driven, that like want to do good, right? They want to do well and do good all in the same transaction. That's what our business is built on, right? Like, but there are certain observations that Moser and I made throughout our careers, right? So I'll give you an example. Nearly every investment bank out there, and I worked at two of them. There are these ESG initiatives and corporate social responsibility initiatives, sort of firm-wide. About 10, 12 years ago, I think that's where, I think post-global financial crisis, you would show up at these target schools, right? We would show up at these, like, the same schools that all the banks sort of recruit at. And it was interesting. Every year, that crop of new recruits became more and more vocal about, like, not just having the job, right? They weren't like, hey, the things that we would hear were like, hey, I'm really excited about, joining Credit Suisse as an investment banker, but I have a question. What else do you do for the world? And then, I would talk to my friends at, other investment banks, and they would echo the same thing. Like, hey, it's really cool. This new crop of recruits every year starts to, think more and more with the charitable, sort of focus. They're like, what else do you do for the world? Because, and let's face it, the reality is that today's workforce wants more than just a paycheck, right? They want to know that the company that they work for, aspires towards a higher purpose, that there's a greater good to the work that they do above and beyond the scope of client service or whatever their actual day-to-day is. They want to be inspired by their companies. And every company that you go to and you speak with tells you, like, look, we donate $4 million from our foundation every year to charity. If you ask them the other question, does an average employee at your firm know that? Right? That's where the disconnect is, right? So the head of the foundation will tell you, of course, everyone should know. I send them all emails. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But then you go to an average employee, take a cross section, right? 10 employees. Hey, did you know that your firm donated $4 million to charity every year? You are almost always met with shock. It's like, no, wow, that I knew we did something, but I didn't know we did that, right? And so, like, that very intended benefit some of these companies want to extract from, doing good or making those donations, is to really get in front of the employee, right?
Yes.
And let them know that, hey, we as a firm care about our communities, right? And that's been a challenge, right? If you at the boardroom, at the C-suite, all the ideas that get brought to the table, right? Like, look, you hear this, the buzzwords that I just mentioned to you, you hear it at every company, especially post-pandemic, you hear it even more. But like pre-pandemic, even like 3-4 years ago, we would hear, like, ESG, corporate social responsibility, employee engagement, culture, impact. Those are all initiatives that existed at every company. But the ideas that get brought to the table all involve two very scarce resources. It's either time or it's money. And oftentimes it's both, right? And so that's where like sort of the insight sort of came to mind, right? For both of us, for Mohsin and I. It was like, listen, every company is trying to sort of like address their ESG footprint, right? They want to tell the story about impact, but like they're spending millions of dollars in trying to do it. And the problem is that they're using this outdated sort of food ordering system that like, I won't, just out of respect, I won't name any names here, but like everyone knows who it would be. But there, and I used like, 9+ years of Wall Street. Almost every dinner that I ordered was using my company's like account, right?
What kind of budgets are we talking about for expense allocation for these kinds of meals? I mean,
It's interesting. Back in the day, it used to be about $25
mhm.
at the investment banks. I think it's around the same today, $25, $30 um,
Per meal per employee.
per dinner. Yeah, per meal, per employee. And law firms tend to be a bit higher, right? So they tend to be around $35, $40. Tech companies, they're more weighted towards the lunch business than they are dinner. But nonetheless, they all sort of sponsor meals. And so when we looked at it and we said, look, every company administrator complains about the incumbent platform, right? Which had sort of dropped the ball on like,
That's just funny.
right?
We had a paint. We just repainted our restaurant, and I was making a joke that every single contractor will always say something bad about the previous contractor. How could you do this work?
It's funny. So, and as users complain about it too, all right? And so like, look, why do they complain about it, but they're sort of stuck on the same platform? Why can't they change? And the reason is because no one had a robust enough technology that accounted for all of those, like the multitude of use cases that every single one of these clients need, the integrations, I mean, you name it, right? The security, the enterprise readiness,
The accounting, the payments, all of it.
everything. Exactly. You got it right. So we said, you know what? Why don't we actually front load all of our time in understanding these use cases? Because like, remember, building, look, there are two different sort of schools of thought here, but unfortunately there are a lot of companies, especially in like easy monetary policy, and when there's a lot of liquidity out there, companies tend to raise money and they spend $5 to make one, right? And so Mohsin and I we didn't think that way, right? We're more private equity minded, and we're like, look, let's figure out how to build the actual business first and understand the customer, the use cases, the user journeys, all that stuff. And it took us a few years. It took us a few years to build it, but once we built it, that flywheel got started, and one company switched over, and then two, and then three, and then by the time you know it, 30 of the Vault 50 law firms, the most prestigious law firms in the country, now exclusively use Sharebite as their food ordering platform. And there's a reason for that, right? Because we focused, we had a laser focus on becoming the gold standard, the undisputed gold standard of corporate food ordering technologies. And it's one part food ordering, but it's, I'd say 1/3 probably food ordering is kind of that's what people use our website for. But like the integrations, the software, the payment technology, all that stuff, that's the other side of it, the back end that no one actually gets to see. And you only get to see a small sliver of it as a customer. And you only understand
the digital hospitality. It's the oh shit. When something works, when Uber works, you go, how am I using it? Why am I calling a cab and waiting on hold? Like,
exactly.
You don't even see what's happening, but because you don't see what's happening and you're communicating of what is happening, that's the magic.
Exactly. And listen, we spent years building out the use cases. Thousands of use cases are built out in our system. So oftentimes we'll get a call from an existing client of ours, our VP of Ops, Amr, gets a call, and he's like, and hey guys, like I have an idea. It's kind of zany, but like if you built it, we would use it. And what's music to our ears is when he goes, Sean, hang on 1 second. And then he says, refresh your browser. And then like that, you go, oh my God, how did you guys do that? That's
Yeah.
exactly what I just asked you for. Chances are we probably built it out for somebody else. Right.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I talk about it every single week on this podcast is if you're an owner, if you're in the hospitality business, like there has never been a more receptive time for tech companies that understand if they listen to me, if they listen to my staff, if they listen to my team, if they listen to feedback, they know it's not just our restaurant. That these engineers, they don't want to build a shitty product. They want it to work. And if they knew it didn't work, like it would drive them up the wall. So
exactly.
why are my managers complaining, oh, this doesn't make sense? I'm like, listen, if the user experience doesn't make sense, let's give them the feedback.
Exactly. And so we're a company that listens to it. Not only just listens, we actively seek it out. So, um, and because of that, um, we've been able to build, you know, a pretty sizable client base. We're the first and only company um, that has ever been able to compete in a meaningful manner in the corporate space. So much so that um, the average customer that switches over from the incumbent platform onto Sharebite does so after having spent about 17 years on that platform, right?
Crazy.
Um, and and
Crazy.
uh, and let's I'll just I'll just put it out there that like um, so much so that the founders of Seamless heard about us a few years ago, and not only did they invest in the company, but one of them joined our team as our head of business development. So um, and so like the more companies understand what ShareBite does and what our trajectory is going to look like, um, the more intrigued they are. They're like, wait a second, we've never heard of ShareBite. Like, how are you at like every other company that I talk to now? Right. And I've come across that situation too, right? With different sort of products where like you don't ever hear about it, but then like the one time you hear about it, you hear about it from everybody.
Yep.
And
Well,
so,
yeah, I mean, it's like me going and talking to restaurant owners about Slack, and they have no clue what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
then you go and I interview tech CEO. It's like there's nobody that's not on Slack. I'm like, well, how are we not using this in the restaurant? How's there not? I go to Slack and I'm asking them to give me an example of another restaurant using Slack, and they can't do it. I'm like, that's crazy to me. But they've been focused on a different category, and that yet it's this huge, incredible, powerful company. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like once you hear about it and then you go, well, that's magic. Why aren't we using that magic?
that's right. And restaurants want that too, right? Because let's face it, like delivery has become a significant portion of sort of the restaurant business, right, altogether.
Absolutely.
um and it's become one that's avoidable. But like if you look at the major metropolitan sort of hubs like the New York Cities, the Chicagos, the San Franciscos, right, of the world, like you very quickly realize that there's a whole ecosystem that depends on companies bringing their employees back to the office, right?
Oh yeah.
Consider human, we're like the human, as humans, we're like honeybees, right? Like we like pollinate, right? You go to work, and on your way to work, you stop by somewhere, you go to this restaurant, or you frequent this place. And that ecosystem um, has largely vanished because of the stay in place orders. And so a lot of and there's this partnership for New York City. There are a lot of CEOs and like company executives that have come out there and said, you know what, we're actually going to bring our employees back to the office, not by a little, but back like in full force. And that's really been sort of that massive growth area for us, because today we're not a company that's like focused just on the New York City, Chicago, and DC markets. We're nationwide, right? With 10 12 cities actually.
Have you launched in San Diego yet?
San Diego's not one market for us right now, but we're in
You're ready
California.
for a restaurant. We're willing and able, and we'll tap all the other restaurants.
You'll be the first call that
Perfect.
you make. But yeah,
Perfect.
look, there's so many companies out there that are starting to think about return to the office plans, and our thesis has been, look, if you don't have a robust food and beverage strategy to reopen your office, you don't have a plan, right? Because every company that you speak with, you know, is out there telling you, listen, we want to bring our employees back to the office. We're paying, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in rent, and it's unoccupied space. We need to come back. And but when we do come back, we don't want our employees going up and down crowded elevators. We don't want hundreds of delivery people waiting in our lobbies. And if we have a cafeteria or any sort of public space, we don't want to reopen it. And so Sharebite comes along and says, hey, we'll help you with that, right? So what we do is our Sharebite.
More powerful before you is the fact that it's so much easier for us as a restaurant to take care of 75 employees than it is to take care of 4 orders here, 6 orders here. We can give much better quality to a 75 person order. Plus, chances are, you know, we can do it right off the bat. You know, if somebody orders an hour before lunch, but if somebody orders 2 days in advance, guess what? We can put extra love and care into that package and make it even better.
What if I gave you access, and I gave you access to 20 companies in your, you know, within a specific delivery radius, and I told you that you can get all of your orders batched together, right? And you can get it, you know, a day before.
No problem.
Right? No problem, because you have economies of scale as a restaurant to be able to produce all of those things, right? And you'd much rather produce, you know, 150 orders in a batch than to do 150 like, oh, I got this delivery and I got that delivery and I got to send them all somewhere else.
It's so incredible what's happening. I mean, literally the pandemic has forced so many restaurants to adapt and build their catering platforms onto their delivery platforms. So it's one of the things that we've always, when we started building our catering program, it was, how do we make catering easier for our guest? The easier we make it for our guests, the easier it is for someone to go on our website, go, this is what our menu, this is what my budget is, this is what I'm going to order, the more orders that we'll do. Plus, we need to make it easy for us as a restaurant. So the easier we make it. But now during the pandemic, I even, just this last weekend, I went to Sahara restaurant out here, incredible Mediterranean food, but I went to their website to try and order for, 10 people. And it's this whole old process of filling out a form. Somebody's going to contact me 72 hours, but then I go to DoorDash, order online, and they've put everything in meats by the pound. Yep. Literally, I got the order that I wanted. I picked it up within less than an hour, and it was phenomenal.
Yep.
It's literally forced them to think differently in economies of scale.
Yep. And so that's what's happening right now. And the future of, look, back in the day, pre-pandemic, right? We were in this business too. If you were ever watching like the late night sort of TV shows, Chris Cuomo or, Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper, the production staff that they at CNN used to order on Sharebite, and there were trays of catered food. And we had so many companies that used to order trays of catering to their office for their lunches, employee lunches. And you had that lineup, right? People got their plates, they lined up, they got their food. But the complaint that we would hear from office managers was like, oh my God, this is the most stressful job I've ever had.
Because, they don't want to catering.
Right? It's such a stressful job. I need to figure out what my employees want to eat.
Right? Yeah, well, they understand what a restaurant knows is there's a reason why every buffet you go to, there's probably somebody, a staff member on the protein line. They're the ones saying, oh, how many ribs would you like? Instead of somebody else going through the line, and next thing you know, the lead anchor doesn't get any ribs because, the production guy came through the cracks.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue altogether. So there's the did I order enough food or did I order too much?
Yep.
And then, you got food waste and you got to pay somebody to come pick it up or throw it away and then sort of get yelled at by somebody like, why'd you order so much? Then you got this sort of choice issue, right? Like, oh, Italian food, it's July. I didn't want to eat Italian food in July. Or, oh, I'm vegan, or I have this dietary restriction and I need this, and accounting for all of those sort of preferences is it's a laborious kind of office managers have some of the toughest jobs, right? Because not only do they have to manage a whole office and run the office, but then they got to figure out how to feed their employees. Yeah. So what Sharebite Station really does is we actually put these shelving units within your office. And so as long as your order is placed by, a specific cutoff time, typically it's a day before, depending on the area, right? In the larger, denser cities like New York, as long as your order is placed by, typically 10 a.m., all of the food arrives in your building in one delivery per restaurant. And not only that, every lunch is individually wrapped, packaged, labeled with your name on it, information, location, phone number,
Awesome.
and it gets brought into your office and staged on these things called Sharebite stations. And so, and you can rotate as many restaurants as you want as a company. You can add, remove, depending on the head count, right? We can slot new restaurants in. We can hot swap some of them out. We can even allow your employees to opt out of the group order and like order because maybe someone is strict about, maybe they're kosher or something like that, or um, uh, you can sort of subsidize all that. You can not subsidize it. There's so many customizations that we can make. And that has essentially become the sort of like gold standard product. So today, Sharebite Stations is not only active in New York City, in Chicago, in Irvine, California, in Oakland, but like we have Charlotte, North Carolina, right? There's so many different companies that are like, how quickly can you install this in my office? My
Yeah.
office is based in South San Francisco, or we're based in Burlingame, right? Can you install this in our building? Or I heard about you from my counterpart at this company, and they're like, we can't live without this product. So like, what's so special about you guys aside from the charitable donation that we make?
It's amazing. I
They,
mean, it's absolutely incredible. The fact, like, you can empower restaurant owners in a market that you haven't gone to, that already do business, that already have attorneys, that already have architects, that says, hey, look at this incredible technology that we're using. Even though you're on a different part of town, this makes sense for us to deliver it to you. You've always wanted to order from us. Hey, get Sharebite. We'll be on the platform and we're going to come and start bringing you and your employees food twice a month, whatever it is,
I mean, you
or
get
whatever you want.
every day, right?
Every day, every day. Yeah, let's get that everyday plan.
Every day, every other day, every company today wants, even if they didn't have a employee sort of meal ordering program, they want to implement one today. And that's where it's not only exciting for us, right? But it's really, really exciting for the restaurant community, right? And look, my good friend Jeff Bank, who was the founding trustee of the New York Hospitality Alliance, um, a phenomenal human being. But like when I talk to him, I get like a first kind of glance, like front row seat to like restaurants and like the plight of restaurateurs, right? And the work that the guys at New York Hospitality Alliance are doing, Andrew, and just everybody in general. They're We all need to be in it together to help save these restaurants, because restaurants are not just a place to eat or get food from. They're a part of the sort of the cultural fabric that makes our cities and our towns and our communities what they are, right? Um, and the better your restaurants and the more passionate sort of those restaurateurs are, it's just accretive to society in general, right? Like I just and I've felt really bad knowing that like every restaurateur that we spoke with over the last year have said, look, no one's helping us. We're not getting any help, right? And it took almost a year for any kind of relief to be sent your way. And so when we wanted to show leadership as a company, we said, you know what, we'll be the first to tell you, like, we're not going to charge you a penny in commission. We're going to pump you with some orders. We're going to put you on these rotations for Sharebite stations. We're not going to charge you anything. And we get a lot of testimonials, some from very, very prominent restaurateurs. Thank you so much for doing what you did. There's so much goodwill trapped in in the work that we did. Yeah, we didn't do an ounce of PR related to it. We didn't tell anybody about it, right? We've as a company, we've largely been under the radar because we've quietly built a software as a service business Every company on our platform is exclusive, right? They don't run us side by side with another platform. And frankly, there's not another platform that is able to do what Sharebite's able to do, and in the way that we're able to do it for not only our corporate clients, our restaurant partners, and for society, right? Charitable partners like City Harvest. So I'm very proud of that.
When you were talking before about recruiting and about the good, all these incredible companies that have a mission and they give back, yet most of their employees don't know they give back. It really struck a chord because it's something that we talk about often, and it's something why we're so focused on digital storytelling. I mean, we wouldn't be in the position we are if it wasn't for, the gifts of, we're building on the backs of giants. The fact that we can, produce content. We don't have a PR agency. We are our own PR agency. If we want to get the word out, we put something on Twitter, we do an Instagram video, we publish on LinkedIn, we have a podcast, we do YouTube videos. But digital storytelling, it's not just about the work that we're doing, but by publishing that where people are and where they are consuming, allows other people to get awareness about a charity that they might not know, and also gives them a call to action to say, hey, that's something that I believe in. I can buy a meal from that restaurant and know that I'm helping a child in need. When is Sharebite going to start helping this digital storytelling of your corporate clients, the restaurants, and the charity? Because you have restaurants, you have the charity, and then you have your corporate clients, and all this incredible work is getting done. When are you guys going to start publishing?
That's why I agreed to, be on this, first of all, right? Because I think it's the right time for a company like Sharebite to be very vocal about our mission and who we are, right? And we've largely been fine in the past, not doing an ounce of PR, just kind of doing this all under the radar. But the people that use us, right? We didn't really have much of a sales team before, up until relatively recently, because our clients were our number one salespeople.
Correct. Right? If you do it right, you build a brand that works, then they'll be your greatest ambassadors. I mean, I talk all the time. Peloton never sold me anything. It's my friends who have a Peloton that posted about their Peloton that made me buy a Peloton.
Exactly. So we are a very, very high NPS product, right? And if you look at our inbounds, the rate of inbounds that we've been receiving over the last maybe even 3 months, it's been a record, right? Every week, multiple companies reach out. Hey, how do we get set up on Sharebite? Or even restaurants, right? There are areas that we previously weren't in. We had a restaurant in Wichita, Kansas, inquire on our website about how can we be on Sharebite platform, and we're like,
you already have me signed up. It's how do I recruit restaurants and how do I recruit corporate clients for you? I'm all in on your West Coast.
I appreciate that.
All taken care of.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, our business, when Mohsin and I really, this comes back to your original question, right? Like, how did you build the business? As cliche or maybe cheesy as it may sound, we built it off of just doing the right thing, right? And that means paying respect to the things that need to get done first, right? They're hard. There are a lot of things that are hard about like just building a business, but like finding the right people, right? And not just like, someone asked me many months ago, like, how many employees do you have? I said 0, right? We don't have employees. We don't hire employees. We hire entrepreneurs, right?
I love that.
And so our FTEs are full-time entrepreneurs. And when we bring on people, they go through a screening process that they don't even know that they're going through. Mm-hmm. And the people that we bring on, not only are they functionally great at what they're doing, if they're not, we'll train them and teach them how to do it, right? They're culturally phenomenal, right? They bring, positivity, can-do attitude, all the things that sort of you dream of having in a colleague or coworker. They embody them because they wear a hat of service, right? If everybody at the company, wears this hat of service on like, how can I be of service to you, my client, my colleague, everybody in general. It just makes things much easier, right? And that's what makes us such a nimble team. And the third component of us, our hiring process, is really the mission. We don't ask people like, hey, do you care about feeding hungry children? They tell us, right? They're like, look, I want to be part of Sharebite because of your mission, right?
Yeah.
That sort of unlocks a whole different conversation about like, what would you like to do? What problem do you want us to help solve? And so when the story of Sharebite is one day written, it is that it's our hope that we built this ecosystem um, that was all based on like, hey, every single stakeholder, every single participant in our sort of supply chain is able to extract a ton of benefit by being involved with Sharebite. And so like everyone has to win, right? There are no losers in this action. So it's got to be a win-win-win value proposition. And and that's how we built the business. And it's a story of resilience, really. And the thing is, we all have it, right? We're innately resilient creatures. We've evolved that way for millions and millions of years. The best story I could tell you is just yesterday. My 4-year-old built up this like big tower of like Lego blocks, and he probably worked all morning to sort of do that, right? He was very proud of it, and in one fell swoop, his little brother, my 1-year-old, came barreling in and just destroyed everything. It all just collapsed right in front of him.
You're describing my house yesterday.
Well, there's a lot of learnings and a lot of metaphors there for just life in general. And my 4-year-old was very upset, right? He went down for a nap. He went down crying. He was annoyed. But when he woke up later that afternoon, he was like, I'm going to rebuild this whole thing from scratch, right? And he not only rebuilt the thing, he built it better, but he built a fortress around it. So when his little brother comes barreling through, he kind of trips over the blockade of like pillows.
A true entrepreneur.
Right. And so he turned to me and I was like, that's really interesting. And he goes, look, Dad, I rebuilt it. It's much bigger and better than it was before Rohan destroyed it. And I go, there's so much here in that same story that tells the story of mankind, right? Of human beings. We are resilient creatures. This pandemic is proof of it, right? All of the moments of crisis that we as a civilization have gone through, we've been able to overcome that. And look what's happening in the country today, right? Pace of vaccinations are very encouraging. A lot of companies thinking about bringing their employees back. There's this sense of return to normalcy. It's around the corner, right? It's not happening tomorrow, but come 6 months, we'll see some return to normal. And we as a company cannot think of a higher calling than to give back to this country at a time that it needs us the most. With kids, not being in school, they're going hungry, restaurants struggling, right? Companies wanting to bring their employees back to the office, right? Which I believe is a noble cause. And us being able to be that force for good, right? We want to be that conduit that helps sort of facilitate all these transactions. And the reason why companies work with us is not only because of the product, but at the end of the day, they get to leverage their employees' behavior, which is just ordering food, right? And in a visible manner, put their company's name on giving back to society at a moment when they have their employees' undivided mind share and 100% of their attention. When I go on Sharebite and I order from my favorite restaurant, it says, Dilip, thanks for ordering. Here's a meal that was donated from this to help feed children facing hunger in your local communities. But your restaurant, right? Sharebite was able to help get that restaurant back on its feet in the post-pandemic world. Okay. And it's something that we as a company are very, very passionate and proud of. And and I look forward to telling that story and being much more vocal about it, as you said, because we do live in a permissionless economy right now, right? Um, to do what you're doing today, it would have taken a lot of money, a lot of relationships, a lot of everything, and you're able to sort of spin this up in a permissionless manner. And I think that is really the future. And we, as a company, want to be enablers of that, right? Restaurant tours should be able to start restaurant operations in a permissionless manner, right? And being able to gain access to corporate clientele that you otherwise would not have access to. And so that's our mission. Um, and when the story of Sharebytes one day, Sharebyte is written one day, uh, I hope that it's not going to be about anything else aside from uh, that we were able to set an example that you can do well and do good all in the same transaction, and do what you love by just working with the people that you really enjoy being around. And that's how we've been able to build the company, keep the culture intact, and that's the reason why we're going to become the next sort of billion-dollar business.
I love that. Well,
It's
Dilip,
exciting.
the one thing I would argue with you is the story is not going to be written one day. The story is getting written right now. And the more that you start sharing that story, the more you're going to empower your restaurants, the more you're going to empower the charity, the more children you're going to help, and the more that you're going to empower your clients, the corporate clients, to understand this is the answer to those problems that they're having when they're going to recruit. Once they're sharing this content of the work that they're doing on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat, whatever the platform is, Clubhouse, whatever it is, once they're sharing that story, the problem is it's so much harder in those environments to do what we've had to do. We had to do it out of bare necessity. So everyone needs to rethink what digital marketing is, what digital media is, what storytelling is. And I applaud you for coming on the podcast today. You're a true inspiration. Thank you for what you're doing. Where's the best place people can find Sharebyte?
Sharebyte.com, or go to our LinkedIn page, and you'll start to see a whole lot of content that's getting put out.
Beautiful.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to my team, because I'm only able to tell this story because of the work, the tireless efforts that they put in and day out, to help build this company. Right? They're the real inspiration. I just wanted to mention that here.
And then my say for your team is that they also should be empowered in a permissionless society to be able to share how much they love coming to work and the work that they're doing. And it's so easy to do it on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn. There's never been an easier time to show that you love what you're doing. Update your LinkedIn profile, share the content. You guys do a phenomenal job on LinkedIn. Share that content, like the content, and we're grateful for anybody that's listening to this podcast. The last thing we say is stay curious, get involved, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Dilip, thank you, my friend. I know we're going to have more conversations in the future. So thank you. If you need anything on the West Coast, please reach out.
I look forward to that, Sean. Thanks so much for having me on, and I look forward to more of our conversations.